Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Outland's Royalty, a web-based interview show where the current crown of the Outlands interviews past kings and queens to talk about their time upon the Stag Thrones and hear the stories from days gone by. I am your host today, Bela Kosh of the Chippendales. I'm the current king of the Outlands, and I'm very honored to have as my first guest, Duke Artan macAilin.
Hi, everybody. That was great. So, it's my turn to talk. So, I was thinking, the first time I was king, Ronald Reagan was president. Is that crazy?
That is crazy.
That's like, oh my God, I've been around so long. But my first event was in '82, and I've been playing pretty much steady the whole time since then. I went to Grand Outlandish, and it was a coronation then. In those days, the Outlands was a principality, of course, and I think the prince was a guy named Kal-bardr from Salt Lake City, because in those days, Utah was part of the Outlands. And we were all part of Vatenveld, and it was Heinrich Armpitsbane's second coronation. And so he was the first king I ever saw, and I was like, oh my God, the king, it's the king. It was amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you are the first Duke of the Outlands, and you have reigned 6 times.
Yeah.
Do you know which number reign you were for all of those?
Oh, I used to. I was 3, 6, 9, 17, 21, and then like 42. So yeah.
Very well done. I couldn't do that for me. There's no way. So
you have so many. What can you say, right?
No, I have one more than you, but I still can remember all of those.
Fair enough.
So as the first Duke of the Outlands, and as someone who reigned during the early years of the Outlands, is that something? Was it something that you were in the moment you were aware that you were shaping kind of the culture and how the Outlands would be when you were crowned, or was that something that you didn't really kind of realize until much later?
Great question. I think that our understanding was that we were just going to do what Vatenveld did. So it was like, no, we're just going to kind of continue on with the traditions that we have, because, the Outlands was old. Even when we became a kingdom, we'd been around for a really long time. And so not really until we started doing stuff. And then we were like, oh, I can change that, right? Like now the warlord has the axe. Well, the warlord never got the axe. And then we had a coronation. It was like in Laramie, and Håkon of Jorvik he was from the Citadel. He drove whatever that is, 12, 17 hours to get from El Paso to Laramie, which is, I don't remember what Laramie was called. And so he had just won the warlord tournament. And I'm like, this guy just drove 17 hours. He's got nothing to do. Here, old Thunderhead. That'll be cool. And so that's the kind of stuff. So then I'm like, yeah, you can change things and it'll stick and you can just go from there. So it took me a little while to realize that, like maybe 3 reigns in, but then it was like, yeah, we can change stuff and it'll be that way for a long time. Yeah.
Awesome. That's very cool. So would you say there was a lot of friendly competition to try and become the first Duke of the Outlands?
Between me and Johan, sure. Yeah, because so Gunnbot was first, and then everybody thought Gunnbot was going to be the first Duke. And then Johan followed him, right, second, because obviously, Gunnbot ran the tournament. And then the next one, everybody thought Gunnbot was going to win. And I ended up winning that tournament. And so at that point, then it was like kind of between us 3, and then it was just Johan was going to win. He was the best fighter around. I mean, he kind of taught me everything I knew about fighting. And he was so great. I mean, Johnny was just the best. And he would take all this time and just work with me. And you know what that's like when you got like your mentor and he's just showing you what to do. And he was just the best. And so when we went up to the crown tournament in Denver, Chris Houghton was king. And so it's he and I in the finals, and whoever wins that fight is going to be the first Duke, right? And so I just figured John was going to win because he was so good and he had taught me everything I knew. And he ended up throwing his shoulder out. So he throws this big wrap, I block it, and his shoulder just goes out, boom, and he can't throw any more shots. And so that's how I got to be the first Duke. So there was a little bit of that, but we all just figured it was going to be Johan because he was so good. Okay.
So did the colors thing start right away, or was that something that started after Johan?
It started about a year after that. So I went crown, Johan followed me. So we were both Dukes now. We were like the first 2 Dukes. And then a fellow named Leif Iverson won crown after that. And then I won again, but that's before I won the crown tournament. They were looking for a theme for Grand Outlandish. And so at Grand Outlandish, they said, we're going to have the two dukes fight, because we had two dukes from the Outlands, right? So I was going to get an army and Johan was going to get an army. And so that's when the colors came up. So Johan was the black duke and I was the white duke. And then I happened to win crown like about a month before that. So then I ended up being king at that Outlandish. So that's where the first two came up, because we were going to have a big fight at Outlandish. And it was just so much fun, because like the whole weekend was just white duke versus black duke. And yeah, it was really great. But that's where that came from.
Very cool. What are your thoughts on the colors thing that the Outlands does? Do you think it's a cool thing? Is it a weird thing to you, or?
I like it. I like it because it's unique. Nobody else does it, right? And I like things that are unique, like Outlands, like lightning. Okay, so like our sort of state, we use it for everything. No other kingdom in the known world has that. People are trying, like they're trying to get a sword, but we use it for all of our oaths, for all of our dubbing of knights. I mean, it's like the magic thing that we have, and you know what it's like. I mean, it's magic. And so I like Outlands things, and the colors for dukes is an Outlands thing. And it kind of started just as a joke between Johan and I, but it just exploded from there. And then Sirith, I believe, was the next duke, right? And so he was like, hey, can I have a color? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you can't, you just, it just doesn't work like that. It just has to be whatever. It just has to be organic. And then I wrote a letter in the Outlandish Herald, because I was king again, and I called him the Red Duke. And then that was it. It just stuck after that. And then once he got his color, then everybody had to get a color. And it was like, we didn't have a lot of downrange thinking about this, because there's only so many colors, right? So it's like, one time there was like 8 dukes living in Alberon. It's like, wait a minute, there's not that many primary colors. What are we going to do? And so then guys started to get like, creative, like you're the Bone Duke, and Alric is the Iron Duke, and Boleslaw's the Amber Duke, Hrothgar's the Golden Duke. He's not the Gold Duke, he's golden. I love that. Anyway, so it was sort of short-term thinking, but then it worked out, because guys get to be whatever they want. So it works out. It's cool.
It is very cool. So do you remember who all of your champions were? And if you do, Sir Bardolph wants to know who your favorite champion was.
Bardolph was my favorite champion. That's great. Did you write that?
Yes, he did.
That's hilarious. Sorry. Who was your favorite squire? Of course, my favorite squire was Beatrice. Oh, was that the wrong answer? Sorry, Sir Bardolph. We're making fun of that, because Bardolph was my squire too. That's why he's asking. And my favorite champion, I don't know. So my champions were, Johan was my first champion. He was fabulous. My second champion was, now I'm drawing a blank, because you guys were asking me. But I could really do it. Needham was one of my champions. Oh, Olaf Bjornsson was my champion. He was the best. I guess Olaf Bjornsson, he was fabulous. Mordigan was my champion. He was great, just really great. Jalut was my champion. He was not a great champion. Not that he wasn't a great knight. He was, but he was Earl Marshal, and he was the Queen's champion. He was the King's champion all at the same time. So he didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to me. But so I think that was all of them. Is that all of them? Yeah.
That's crazy. That's one man doing those 3 jobs at the same time.
And he ran Estrella War. And that was the year we did the big 3, like the big 3 army Estrella War. So he was running all that while he was our champion, and he was Earl Marshal. It was a ton of work.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So for your champions, were all of them, did you pick them? Did they win?
No. So in those days, Elfled had this idea at the first crown. Elfled was the first queen, right? Elfled and Gumball. And she said, Stefan of the Wanderers came in second, and the Adenvelt guys never really did anything for the guys who came in second. And so she thought, it would be nice if the guy who comes in second gets something from the tournament. And so what she decided was, we'll have the guy who came in second be the King's champion. And so we did that for a long time. And so that started in 87. And then in 95, Hrothgar won crown, and he beat Jalut in the finals. And Jalut at that point had come in like twice or 3 times in a row. And so he was kind of not interested in being champion, because he'd just done it a bunch. And so at that point, Hrothgar picked. So Jalut said, I'm not going to do it. And then Hrothgar picked Richard of Wolfwood, who had lived here at that time, but he was a knight from Callantyr. And so that was like the first guy to pick. And then I followed Hrothgar, and then I just said, okay, we're going away. So from now on, kings just get to pick. And that's what we did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as someone who has reigned 6 times, you've given a large amount of your life to serving this kingdom.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be Crown of the Outlands?
Oh, it's just like the greatest. And sometimes I don't. To me, it's always meant the most because I love the Outlands, and I really honestly cared about where it was going and the direction of the kingdom, and that we would always be honorable, and that when people went other places, that they would be envious that those people, when they saw the Outlanders, that they didn't get to be part of the Outlands. And so being king of that was just such a big deal. And it always just meant the world to me. And you've probably heard this. Sometimes when you're about to step down, people would say, "Oh, you're probably really glad to step down." And for the most part, it's like, well, I'm a little tired of all the travel, but I loved being king. And so it was always a little sad for me to step down. It wasn't ever like, whew, I'm out. It was like, no, this is a little sad, but hopefully there'll be another one in my future. And that worked out pretty much like 5 times. And then, yeah, not so much lately.
Well, I think in order for it to work out, you actually have to fight in the tournaments, Your Grace.
There is that. And I haven't fought in a really long time. I think I haven't fought since I won. I'm like, I'm going out as a winner. This is it. We're done.
So you have between the 20th and 42nd reign, that's quite a big gap of being crowned.
Yeah, it was 95 and then to 2000 and 2006. It was 11 years.
Were you fighting in crown tournaments between there, or were you just make a conscious decision to not want to be crowned during that time? Or
I fought in a couple, and this is going to sound braggy, but I got tired of throwing crown tournaments. So I remember I would fight guys, and I would get to the 4th round and go, okay, these guys all want to be king, and I don't want to. So I'm just going to fight with a great sword and get hit in the head. Boom. Okay, now I'm down. And I got a little tired of that. It's like, no, I'm just not going to fight. And so I think I really encourage everyone to fight in as many crown tournaments as they can. But in those days, I still had the opportunity to win, and I didn't really want to be king. So it was kind of like, I didn't think it was fair of me to go there and to not do my best or try my hardest with my best weapon style. So, but I did. I tried a couple times, and when I just didn't like it, so I stopped.
Oh yeah. When you won your crown tournaments, was it you mentioned fighting greatsword? Did you win all of them with sword and shield, or did you win multiple weapon styles? Or
I think I won all of them. Yeah, I mean, I fought with different weapon styles, but I don't think I ever won one with a different weapon style. I think the craziest thing I did was fight with a round shield, because I was like, who can win with a round shield? That's stupid. And then I ended up winning. So, but yeah, so I think I did. Yeah, everything was sword and shield. Because I really like sword and shield, not that thing that you fight with. What is that? Oh, that's called.
Shields are okay sometimes, I guess.
Oh, you're so nice. Say what you always really say.
That a shield is a tool of ignorance?
Yes, that's what you say.
So from your first reign to your last reign, what would you say was the biggest difference between reigning?
I thought you might ask that. And so reigning, I think the difference was we were all so happy. We were all so young. I mean, Horus was first time I was king, I think Horus was the oldest guy I knew, and he was in his mid-30s. He's maybe 35, right? So we were all so young. And so we were just happy to have enough money to get to an event. And we didn't care about, this is a gross generalization, obviously, but we didn't care a lot about what our tents looked like or whether our costumes were period or not. It was perfectly acceptable to have a zipper, right, in your dress. I mean, it was just fine. And so what happened after that was people started doing a lot of really careful research more into the Middle Ages, and they started to worry about what their rig really looked like, make sure that it was authentic to something that happened in the Middle Ages. And our camps really changed. And so that was just externally, the culture was different because we cared a little bit more, I think, about how we looked. Okay. But reigning wise, I mean, it was so different because in the early days, everything was by mail. So you had to buy stamps, and copying was expensive, and you couldn't call anybody because it was all long distance calls. And I remember when Beatrix and Hagen moved, I got a call from Johann, excuse me, who lived in El Paso. And it was a $10 phone call just for 30 seconds to tell me, yeah, Beatrix just moved. Woo! So yeah, anyway, I think communication became so much easier. So that made it a lot easier to reign, obviously. So.
Very cool. Do you think there's any downsides to all of the instant communication?
Yeah. I think you have to deal with stuff I never had to deal with. Oh my God, like those guys who were, I'm not pulling any punches today. I'm just going to tell stories. So, but there were those folks who wore the swastikas writing Kaid. And I don't know those people, and I don't really even know the story, but I know that there was so much instant like anger and people being upset, and they had to deal with all that they ended up abdicating, right? Those folks in Kaid. And I think I would never have had to do that. If I had shown up to an event wearing swastikas, not that I advocate that, not that I would have done that, that it would have been word of mouth. I might have heard about it, but there was always such a delay in any kind of upset like that. So I think it's much harder now for you to be king with all the stuff you have to deal with. I mean, you've told me some stories about people saying stuff about other people that are like, oh my God, that's just terrible. And you have to deal with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to be crowned. That is for sure.
Jean-Marie just sent us a note.
Yeah, Jean-Marie would like to know, did the way you chose to elevate, who you would elevate, change throughout your reigns?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you go and you grow and you learn more about the Outlands and you learn more what's important to people. And I mean, in the early days, I was really against making a master at arms. I just thought that was the worst thing in the world. And that changed for me. I made Melvin a master at arms just because that's what he really wanted. And he was such a great guy. And he needed to be a peer and he needed to be a fighting peer. So I'm like, yeah, we'll do that. So absolutely. So it just as you get more experience, like when I was first king, the first time I played in Alberon, and I really hadn't been to Kerta very much at all. And I didn't know a lot of folks up there. And so the folks that I did meet, I just fell in love with, like Douglas McAndrew and Kate Holford. And they were just fabulous, but I didn't know a lot of folks. So when it came time to make peers, I made peers of the people that I knew, that I had lived with, that I had worked with and fought with, and had seen their art and seen them running events. And so as I got older, I certainly learned that you need to take people's opinions, localities, their opinion, when they come to you and say, hey, this person needs to be a peer, you need to take that into account, whether you really knew that or not, at least for me, because it's like, they all love this person. Let's do this, even though I don't have a lot of personal knowledge of that. And that changed because I wouldn't have done that the first time I was king at all.
That's very cool. That's a really good way of looking at things too. And yeah, I would say that the decisions I made in my first reign are vastly different than decisions I make now. And it's a lot of that has to do with experience and doing the job more than once.
Yeah, but I think the thing that came to the first one is that you loved the Outland so much, and that never changed. And so when you made peers, like you united Baku, right? Great guy. I never met him. I didn't know him at all. And so I felt you were doing what I had done in my first couple of reigns, right? Now, I mean, he's one of the best knights we've ever had. I mean, seriously, he's fabulous. But I was thinking, yeah, that's just you being local. But because you loved the Outland so much and you traveled and you went everywhere, it was like, cool, kings get to make knights. Let's just go with it. And look how well that turned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the uniqueness of the colors, and that's one of the things that you really love about the Outlands. Are there other traditions or unique things that you view as being Outlandy or the way the Outlands does things that really mean a lot to you?
Oh yeah. So like our sort of Middle Eastern, we have all the time. That started out right away, and nobody really ever does that. I mean, Callantyre had their singing, but we had our drumming, and that was just fabulous. I mentioned lightning already. I think the way that we venerate our regalia is magical, and other kingdoms really don't have that. Because we kind of started fresh. When we started, all the regalia, like each of the groups gave a piece of regalia to the Outlands. So, like Alberon made the crown boxes, and Alberon made the crowns, and Iroh up in Kirgalen made the scepters. I mean, it was just spread around from the whole kingdom, and other places really hadn't had that. They hadn't had an opportunity to consider what those were, and I think that really it's unique to us, and I really like that. So basically, our culture, our sort of fighting, the way that we fight, the way that we act, the way that we go to war. I love Plan A, right? That's unique to the Outlands, and for you guys to know what Plan A is like when we go to Estrella, we send the army and we just run around the right. And there's been a zillion variations of that over the years, but basically that's what we do, and it's very successful, and we've had really great experiences and luck at Estrella War, and it's because of that, and that's an Outlands thing. So yeah, there's things that I just love about the Outlands. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the regalia. Is there a piece of regalia that would you say is your favorite?
Yeah. So you think I'm going to say lightning, but it's the signet ring. It is.
The signet ring, yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's like that's the hardest thing for me. The crowns are lovely, but like we have a bunch of crowns, but that ring's old and it's magical. And when you're done being king and you take that off your finger, that for me was always the hardest thing. I don't know why, but that was the thing because it's very medieval. Those guys, they would seal stuff. It was just So, but my favorite thing is the king signet ring. How about you? What's your favorite thing?
It's the signet ring as well, actually, and that's why I had a signet ring made so that I have one for when I'm not king.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, I totally lost track of what I was going to say next.
All right.
Is there anything in particular during your reign? So did you create any awards, or did you start a tradition or anything like that that you're particularly fond of? Or
yeah, we did some stuff. I mean, like I said, with the white scarf, and I think that worked out pretty well. Because in the early days, there was a lot of, and this is just my take on it, but it seemed like there was a lot of bias against fencing, right? Because we were guys who fought with rattan weapons, and that was the thing. And fencers were kind of in the parking lot, not really coming inside the events. And so making white scarves was a big deal. And so Berengaria and I did that. Her name was Tara when she was queen, but we did that. That was a big deal. I started the trefoil. I thought that was a cool thing. The trefoils were just, we looked at people who lived in baronies and they had the ability to get baronial awards. And I felt bad for people who lived in shires because they didn't have anything like that. So we said, let's give them something. So that's why we came up with the trefoil. So I thought that was really cool. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not thinking anything else. So what awards did you start?
Oh,
right.
a few. My second reign, we created the Stag and Chalice.
Okay.
Which is the Venerable Guard for Service, basically.
That was just an award to give Kate Holford another award.
No, that was the Doan Mountain. That was my third reign, and that's the 15 years of arts and sciences.
Second Chalice.
Yeah, the second one, Claudia and I made the Stag and Chalice. We created the Vanguard of the Outlands. I think not this last reign, but the one before that, which is for people that go to foreign wars and do a lot of service and basically make the Outlands look badass.
Great, I love that.
Cool. My first reign, Elizabeth and I created the Windover Bard position. So that one especially with Mistress Kyriel and where that name comes from and having so much of my early SCA having been at events on her land and hearing her perform around fires all the time early on. So that one is really special to me for sure.
I'm really glad you guys did that. People don't know Kyriel. She was wonderful. And I mean, I know I say that a lot, but she was just a delight. And she was so talented and so interesting. And she taught me so much. And we would go up and spend so much time with her. I just loved her to death. And I got to make her a walker of the way for me, because it's like, for me, the walker of the way was always like, I want to give it to the person that I want to be the most like. And so I gave it to Kyriel because I just loved her to death. And then when she passed away, it was so sad. And so when you guys did that to honor her, because, the Bardic arts were her thing and she was so great, that's really cool. So thank you for doing that. That was just fabulous.
It was really our honor and our privilege. You mentioned the walker of the way. Do you know all of the people that you've made walkers?
Yeah.
Who are they?
Okay, my first walker of the way was Kate Holford. And then my second was Outland, and she was kind of great. Elf's not watching this, so I'm good. And the third one was Kragon, right? The fourth one was, who was the fourth one? Oh, Kyriel. And then the fifth one was I tried a new thing, because usually you would give it to somebody who had been around a long time that you admired. And so the fifth time I was king, I gave it to a woman named Bridget O'Breslin. She lived in Cairgallon. She was kind of new. Like, she'd only been playing like a couple or 3 years, but she had everything that you could ever want in a person to be playing in the society. And I just thought she was fabulous. And so I made Bridget O'Breslin a walker of the way. And she ended up not playing very long. So I was a little sad about that. But I was just trying something new. And then the last time we made was my former squire, Zachariah DeCane. So I got to make a mom and a son walkers of the way. And as you know, I love Zach. He's one of the greatest people ever in the entire world. And so, yeah, so those are my 6.
Very cool. And yes, Zach is one of the greatest people in the whole world. And I'm very happy he's moving back to the Outlands. So
right.
That's where he belongs.
Absolutely.
So as king, you've hosted 6 crown tournaments.
Yeah.
Have you, do you have a particular format that you prefer when you host crown tournament to run it?
Yeah, it changed. So in the old days, we would do single fight. So it was always a single fight. And then you'd have single fight double limb or single fight triple limb. And so that's how we ran the formats the first time. I always thought people should bring their best, bring their A game, unless their A game included a Madu. And so that was actually, that's true. As you know, because last time I was king, I made you fight with a shield. So yeah, and Boleslav too. He liked me just as much as you did that day. So, and yeah, anyway, so the format changed, and then we started doing best 2 out of 3 and double limb, and so. But I always liked that what we never did what Kal-bardr did. Not that what Kal-bardr is wrong. It's just what they do is different. They have a set tree. I always liked that we did random draw, and you could end up fighting the same guy twice. And invariably, we'd usually have 3 guys left at the end, and so you'd have to figure out who's in the finals and who has to fight to the finals. But I just like that we had that. That's kind of another Outland thing, although Aiden would do that too. And so did the formats change? Yeah, because we went from basically a single fight to best 2 out of 3, and everything else pretty much stayed the same. Bring your A game.
That's awesome. As the people would send in letters of intent for your crown tournaments, have you ever kept anyone out of crown? And not really why. I don't need to know why, but if you have, why do you think that's important to do as king?
Well, I think that's one of, when you are made king, you swear an oath to ensure that your peers are going to be honorable and that you're going to take care of the Outlands. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And so one of the hardest duties of being king is to decide who's going to succeed you. And you have to look at the candidates who put forward a letter of intent, and you have to say, I think that this couple will do the best for the Outlands. Now, it's not whether you like them or dislike them. It's like, do they have the wherewithal? Do they have the ability to do this? Why are they doing this? I mean, is there an ulterior motive? I mean, and sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's none of my business. So yeah, I actually have kept people out of crown. And I always did it because I thought if those people became crown, it would be to the detriment of the Outlands. But that's a hard thing to do. And I mean, it's really hard to do. And so I haven't done it a lot, but I have done it. Yeah. One time we didn't do letters of intent. So there was a lot of consternation in the mid 90s up in Kerta, and we ended up making them a crown barony, and I was actually Baron of Kerta for a while. And so the day of crown tournament, I just said, if you want to fight, show up and convince me why you should be able to. And that was great. I mean, guys coming, just showing up. It wasn't my idea. It was actually Gunvald's idea, but I'm the one who did it. And people just showing up and having to explain why they wanted to be king. It was kind of, people were a little tongue-tied. They're like, well, if you don't even know why should I let you in? It's like, well, I want to fight. Yeah, I like fighting too, but you could fight after. What, you know? And it was kind of fun. And there were people that I ended up holding out that day because they just couldn't convince me why they should be king. So yeah, I like that. That was fun for me, probably not for them. So.
I like that. I actually, during one of our reigns, during the processional, we asked the couple questions regarding kingdom law or corpora, or basically if they could name, who the kingdom seneschal was or who the exchequer was, things of that nature. And I remember one of the entrants got really mad and was kind of not happy that we asked those questions in that moment, until one of them one of his friends stopped him and was like, don't you think if you're going to be king, you should know who those people are? And then it kind of dawned on them why we were doing it. So yeah, it's one of those, it's hard to keep people out. And it is probably one of the greatest powers really that the crown has to protect things when you are gone.
Yeah. I think it's just a really hard duty that people don't think a lot of when they become king. And there have been kings who didn't take it seriously, and they just basically let anybody in, and then you get what you get. So I think the good kings that we've had have really taken that seriously and really tried to ensure that the legacy of the Outlands continued on. So yeah, I mean, there were times, I remember there was one young fellow who wanted to be king, and he was great. He was a great fighter. He would have won, but he knew so little about the SCA, and he knew so little about the kingdom. And I remember asking him, I'm like, well, do you know what Kal-bardr is? And he's like, I have no idea what that is. I'm like, well, then maybe it's a little too soon for you to be king. So just give it some time. And 6 months later, he was king. So
Yeah. So it looks like we have another question from Countess Matilda. And she wants to know if the signet rings are your favorite because you get to wear them throughout the week.
Yes.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. I think they're because they're so medieval and you can wear it. I used to wear it at work all the time and I would spin it around so that the signet part was just in the palm. I just wore it kind of like a wedding ring. And I remember one time I was autocrating an event. It was Champions in Albron and I was king and I'm autocrating this event. And Sir Vaughan and Sir Bjarni Kenelm decided they wanted to come and jump on me in the middle of the night, right? So I'm in my tent, sound asleep, and these two guys are just beating on me while I'm asleep in my sleeping bag in my tent. And they're like, I'm like, hey, you can't beat me up, I'm king. And they're like, no, you're not. You're just some guy in a tent. And I had the signet ring on, and I flipped it around, I showed it to them, and they went, we're sorry. And they left. So maybe the signet ring is the best.
That is awesome. I've never heard that story before. That's fantastic.
I got lots.
Oh man, and now I'm laughing and I'm totally forgetting the next questions.
Hieronymus the Cherubite is the premier Argent heart. I didn't make that up. That's a real thing. Sorry.
What was that?
Hieronymus the Cherubite is the premier Argent heart. Yeah, that's like a trivia question. Like when they play True Outlander.
Right.
We're like, is that a real person? Oh yeah, he married me actually. He's a priest. He married me and my wife. He's a real guy.
Well, that was actually, so were you already a member of the chivalry when you won your first crown?
No, thanks for asking. No, I was actually. So the first time I won crown, I was the baby knight. I had been a knight all of 6 weeks. So I got knighted at Estrella, and then crown was in it was Easter weekend in April. So I was a knight the first time I was king, which is helpful. I feel bad for guys who aren't a knight the first time. Like Johnny, well, okay, first of all, Gunvald wasn't a knight the first time he was king. But it was kind of different because he was a master at arms. But like Johann, he wasn't a knight. And I think the knights didn't treat him particularly good when he was king because of that. I mean, it was just, and then, the second time Johann was king, he was a knight. And so I think that really helps. I do, absolutely.
Yeah, I had originally had the goal of wanting to become an unbelted duke. And I was knighted at Fall Crown, and then I won Spring Crown as the baby knight. And when I stepped down from my first reign, I took a long, hard look in the mirror and was like very happy that it played out the way that it did instead of the way that I had thought I wanted it. Because I couldn't imagine how hard it would be to be in those meetings and not be a member of that order as king.
Well, I mean, yeah, and so like Johann had it's kind of a detriment for him, right? Being king and not being a knight. Gareth did such a great job. He basically cemented his becoming a knight, right? Because doing a really fabulous job, and there's a little trouble with how he became king, but then once he was king, he was great. And like Hrothgar, he was so fabulous. I mean, he was an unbelted king his first time, and everybody looked at this guy and went, "Why isn't he a knight?" And it was because he was so brilliant at what he was doing as king that we all just thought he needed to be a knight. And so he got knighted immediately after that. So I think it can be hard, really hard. And I think that it can also sort of make your career in the STA by being a really good king if you're an unbelted king. I really think it can.
Yeah, and it is what you make it, right? Like the belt doesn't change who you are as king, but it can help open some doors. That's for sure.
I think so. I remember like Ira was really mad at us because we wouldn't let him knight people because he wasn't a knight. And so he was going to dub, I think it was Gregor and Alberon and Outlandish. And he wanted to hold the sword. And we're like, I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but it's very clear in corpora and it's very clear medievally that knights make knights. So while of course you're admitting him to the order of chivalry, which is what kings do, we need a knight. And so I think Ira made a lot of not good points with the knights when he was really insistent that he was going to hold the sword. So yeah.
Gotcha. We have another question from Mr. Sabia, and she would like to know, what is your most and least favorite aspect of reigning and why?
Making people because people dream about this when they're kids. Young men dream about being knights. I think young women dream about being knights. Doing that, making somebody a pelican. Giving awards is my favorite thing because you make them so happy. people who maybe think that they're not doing a lot or whatever, and then you give them an award and it just really brightens up their day. I think that was my favorite part. I think my least favorite part was driving through Raton Pass. Sorry, that's a joke for Sabia. She's laughing right now. She's like, yeah, he says that a lot. Because every time I drive through Raton Pass, I go, ugh. That has to do with Trinidad. It has nothing to do with, because my folks are from Trinidad. It's a long story. Anyway, the least favorite part, I think, was just the traveling, just moving, having to go places all the time. I love being places. I hate driving to that place. I mean, God, you travel more than anybody in the history of the Outlands. I mean, how many times were you Queen's Champion and you just drive all night to be wherever you had to be? I mean, you know what that's like. So I think the least favorite part was the traveling. Oh, and then, sorry, there were times when there was trouble. I mean, we had some trouble. Like, we had peers we had to deal with. And like I sort of talked a little bit about in the mid-90s, we had a lot of trouble in Cairta. So dealing with like people being dishonorable and stuff, having to banish people, that's I didn't like that. None of that's good. But that was so few and far between. The rest of the reigns kind of make up for that. But there was some serious stuff we had to deal with, and that was never fun.
For sure. And that's kind of the meme that goes around every now and then. Everyone wants to be king until it's time to do king stuff. And that's the hard stuff that no one really wants to do. And a real king handles it with as much grace and poise as they can. And having played in the 90s during those times in Cairta, I'm proud of how you handled those things as an Outlander.
You to say, I was pretty much anathema for a long time in Denver, and then people would get to know me or meet me, and then they would say, well, now wait a minute, you seem like a nice fella, what really happened? And I would tell them my story, and then they would be like, oh, okay, I can live with that. So yeah, it's 25 years ago now, so I mean, it was like, at the time it was bad, but now who cares?
What is the thing that you've heard told that you did or said or whatever that makes you laugh the loudest now?
I heard one time that I banned fencing at Estrella, and that was great because I wasn't king or anything. I was just some guy living in Alberon. That was one of my favorites. That was Thorfinn up in Unterhaven. He was a good. He told everybody I had banned fencing. That was great. Now I think, I heard that the Queen Nerissa, she's a delight. Is it? Well, of course you like her. She told me this great story about how I drove to Denver in the middle of the night to demand the coronets from the Baron and Baroness of Cairta when that whole thing went on. That's a great story. I like that story way more than what really happened. So we're just going with that story.
It is a good story.
Yeah.
From all of your reigns, what is there something that you look back on as a moment in time where you had that, holy crap, I'm the king, everyone's looking to me?
I've had it a couple of times when I was a knight. Certainly, I remember one time there was a guy beating up a girl at Lonely Mountain, and Mordegon was king. And so he and I and Hrothgar had to go confront this guy. And that was like really like, they always talk about that. Like when there's trouble, people look to knights. And I had to go deal with that. But I don't really remember thinking that there was a thing, that I had to deal with as king where it was like, oh, go deal with that now, king. I mean, certainly when you're leading the army at Estrella War, that's a big thing. But it wasn't stressful. That was kind of like, yeah, this is great. So certainly that, never kind of like I have to take the lead and lead us out of trouble or something. Nothing really like that I ever felt that I can remember.
Yeah, that's really more what I was going for, was that aha moment of, oh yeah, I am the king. Everybody's looking at me right now because I'm the guy. It's not guy over there.
Yeah, there was one time we won a bridge fight at Estrella War. That was the greatest moment in the world. I mean, everybody's just screaming and yelling, and we won this huge bridge fight. That was early. And then one of my greatest moments of life is the last time I was king. We won Estrella War. I've been lucky enough to be king in Estrella 3 times, and luckily I was lucky to win all 3 times. But I'm sitting in Grand Court, and the King of Caid comes and gets on his knees in front of me and holds up the Caid banner and hands it to me. And I'm like, that was magic. That was just magic. It was like, oh, I love it. And then, of course, I just turned right around and gave it to the King of Kal-bardr, but I should have kept that banner.
That's very cool. So you've had 3 winter reigns and 3 summer reigns.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
Do you have a preference for one or the other?
I like winter reigns because in winter range, you just get in your car and you go to the event and you put your clothes on and you go. But at summertime, you got to take all your camping gear and all the regalia and everything. So it's just a lot more work carrying, So yeah, I prefer winter range just because there's less putting stuff in my car. But but really, and it's like Australia or Pennsic. Pennzic's great because you go to Pennsic and you get treated like royalty. I know that's dumb, but you really do. And it's fabulous, and you have no responsibilities. And God, when you go to, we're so much better fighters than 95% of the fighters that go to Pennsic. And so you're just a spirit god, and it's magical. When you go to Australia, it's just so ingrained with us. It's just so part of our culture and our soul. And then you lead the army, and then you're victorious in that. And I know who cares? No one could name who won Australia last year, right? But when you're king and you do that, it's at least for me, it was crazy magical. So I liked winter reigns.
Very cool.
How about you?
That's the exact opposite of me, actually.
Okay.
I prefer summer reigns because to me, I'm much more worn out after a winter reign because I have the same amount of time. Well, I have the same amount of stuff that I have to do. I have to have all the circles and the meetings and courts and all of those things for every event we go to, plus war practices and all this stuff. But I've got to cram it all into, a 10-hour day, as opposed to in the summer, I can have a 3-day weekend camping and spread stuff out. And it doesn't wear me out as much as a winter reign does.
Yeah.
And I guess I feel like I have more relaxing time as a summer king than I do a winter king, because
I never considered that, but that's a great point, because when you go to a weekend event, first of all, you might have horrible weather to get there, and that's always horrible. And then everything is really concentrated, like you're saying. But like if you're king at Battlemore, you got 5 days you can have stuff in, or you go to Warders, it's like a 3-day thing. Yeah, I totally get that. Absolutely.
His Grace just had a great comment. Even if the Outlands loses a war, we always win the party. Duke Christopher of Houghton. I couldn't agree more.
Chris Houghton, he was the greatest king. Oh my God, he was fabulous. You're gonna have him on, right, Chris? Everybody listen when Chris talks. He's fabulous.
Yeah, we are working out a time that will work with his schedule and our schedule, and I'm very excited to get him on here for sure.
One of my favorite Chris Houghton stories. This isn't really an SCA story. So the second time I won crown, Chris was king. So I'm crown prince, and a buddy of mine had given us a really old bottle of scotch, and I love scotch. And it was like, I remember, this would have been like 1988, and the scotch was 16 years old. So we're like, okay, what were you doing 16 years ago? And we're all like, yeah, I was 8 years old, whatever. And Chris is like, I was going to my first SCA event. I'm like, it's been around a long time.
That's awesome. What would you say is your, you said your favorite part of being crowned is giving out awards. Yeah. Is there an award in particular that means more to you, that you prefer, that you get the most out of when you give it out?
Yeah. Awards that mean more to me personally, yeah. So making a knight is magical because I really like knighthood. It's really important to me. Making a pelican is really important to me. It's hard in the Outland to get a pelican, as your majesty knows. And they're magical, but I really, really, really like making people court barons. That's a cool thing. And then this is more bragging, but I'm the premier stag's blood. And so making stag's bloods for me was always a really big deal. And no one ever went, oh crap, I got a stag's blood, right? Everybody's like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And so there's some stuff that means a lot to me.
Very cool. So if court baronies are the thing that you really enjoy giving those, what is it about a court barony? What does that award mean to you that makes it so special?
Well, so obviously, like I said earlier, we're from Maiden Belt. So in the early days, the only people who could wear any kind of medal on their heads were people who were barons or viscounts, dukes, and crown, or prince and princesses, but royalty kind. And so giving somebody the ability to wear a coronet was a really huge deal. And we didn't make a lot. I mean, Catherine was a court baroness before she was a duchess, and then I don't think we made another one until I made Elisheva a baronet. So that's 10 years. I mean, we just didn't do it very often. And so it was just a really, really special thing. And now it's special, but it's not as special just because things there's 1,000 stag's bloods, and there's a lot of court barons and baronesses, but it was just giving them the ability to wear that thing and be called Your Excellency was kind of a really big deal. And so I really appreciated that. And it's medieval too. It's king's main parent.
It's very cool. If you could give one piece of advice to someone that just won their very first crown, what would that piece of advice be?
Okay. So the first time I was king, Monica von Zell looked me right in the eye. Monica was Johann's mom. Well, she still is Johann's mom. And she said, "You're not the king of Alberon. You're the king of the Outlands." And I didn't know what she meant. It took me a while. And so what I would say is, if you're going to be king, make sure that you're king of the whole kingdom. Take everybody in the entire kingdoms. Consider everybody's opinion. Consider what they're talking about. Consider their culture, where they're from, before you make decisions, right? And then as an addendum to that, sort of, I would say, don't worry about making everybody happy. Do what you think is right. Because sometimes when you try to make everybody happy, you make nobody happy. But if you just do what you think is right in your heart, what you think is the best for the Outlands, no one's going to gainsay that. It's going to be like, yep, you did your best. I may not like that decision, but you did what you thought was right. And I will always defend the king's right to do that, or the crown's right to do that.
Very cool. So, oh man, I lost my train of thought again. I had a high jumper instead of a long jumper.
That's okay. I can ask you questions. So, like, what was your favorite reign? Like, which one of course, this one, because you're king for like 3 years.
That's not a selling point at all, really. Being the king of Facebook for a year is not a good selling point.
Working out for me, though. You get to talk to people on Facebook. I'm not even on Facebook. Now everyone's watching me. This is working out for me great. So, thank you.
Although I would say this reign has been the one that I was having the most fun with until the world went haywire.
Yeah.
Nerissa is an amazing partner. She's a wonderful queen, and we've just been having an absolute blast. My other reigns were fun as well. My first reign was magical, but I couldn't fight, so that made that one hard. I couldn't pick a most fun reign, but I have enjoyed them all.
Fair enough.
Did you? So you've reigned with 2 different queens.
Yeah.
Did changing queens change how you reigned at all, or change how you approach things?
Yeah. So not necessarily for the better, but I mean, so Baron Gary and I we're kids. I mean, I was 22 the first time I won crown, and we're the same age. And we were just figuring stuff out. We just didn't know anything. And then when I was king the 3rd time with Aziza, she had been around a lot. She'd been like the Seneschal of Drigistan for a long time. So she knew how to do stuff. She knew service, but she didn't really know the kingdom very well. And so I think it took a while. I kind of was more making decisions on my own with the first reign, the 3rd one, which was the first time I was with Aziza. So they were a little bit different. And then as Aziza got more into, she learned what it was to be queen, then the last 3 times with her we were partners, and it was really pretty much similar. They were just different. You're just learning stuff the first couple of times, as you know, and then once you've done it twice, you got this like, I've done this. I know what's going on. Yeah.
So do you find, so one of the things that I've seen happen to people that have won more than twice, and I hear it all the time, is if you're already a duke and you win crown, people automatically assume you won because you have an agenda or you have something you want to do. But yet no one ever says that for the first 2 times. Like, why can't the agenda be, I just want to do the job, right? But did you ever have a specific goal in mind for winning a crown? Was something you wanted to get done?
Yeah. So not this, I guess it was this last time. I was very interested in making Gunvald the triple peer. So much so that I trained all summer, and I won a crown, and you were king, and I was lucky enough to prevail against Malcolm. And so there have been times when there were things that I wanted to do, and I became king because of that. Yeah, but I mean, I like Gunvald, so there you go.
But you wouldn't really necessarily call that an agenda, though, would you? There's just something like you had an award in mind that you wanted to do, right?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Is that an agenda? It's not like there were more than multiple bullet points on my agenda. So I had one. And it worked out.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Do you have any moments from your reigns where you were going to do something and then didn't, or you hesitated and weren't sure and then did it, and you look back on it and go, oh, I should have done that different, or wish I hadn't done that quite that way,
oh
or
yeah.
anything like that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like sometimes you make an award and then you're like, ooh, that was the wrong one, or maybe that was too soon, or maybe that was too late. I should have done it earlier. So yeah, just regrets from the reigns here, little things. I mean, when we had all the trouble in Kerta, I just didn't read people very well. I mean, I wish, hindsight's 2021, because 2020 sucks. That's a joke. Sorry. But I just thinking back, it's like, oh, I should have done this. So absolutely, there are things when you look back and go, man, not good. Should have done that a different way, or like, what was I thinking? Letting that guy fighting Crown. Oh my God, what? Hello. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We have another question that came in from Lady Rosamund Hawksworth. She would like to know, is there a piece of criticism that you've received during one of your reigns that you really took to heart?
Oh no, I was perfect the whole time. That's horrible. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. Was there advice that I took to heart? Absolutely. I mean, people would say really heartfelt things all the time. Can I pick one out? Advice that I got? I think the best advice I ever got was just be everybody's king. I think that's great advice. Don't have an agenda. No, they never said that. They said be everybody's king. So
For sure. If there was someone, I guess, who would you most like to see win crown and reign in the Outlands?
That's a good question. I would really, really like to see Raymond the Quiet win crown and reign in the Outlands, because Raymond was our first knight. He was basically the font of all of our ideals of what it is to be chivalrous. So how we comport ourselves on a field of honor, how we take blows, how we deliver blows, how we speak about our squires in a belted circle, how we act in a belted circle. All of it came from our first knight, Raymond the Quiet. And Raymond was not ever quite able to get past that hump. I mean, he was second in an 8-belt crown, I believe. He was second in like 3 or 4 Outlands Principality tournaments and stuff. If there was anybody that I could ever have seen be king, I would be Raymond the Quiet, I think. I was lucky enough to see Gunvald be king. So if he hadn't have, he certainly would have been one of those guys. I mean, without Gunvald, we're not the Outlands. He just so much of what we do and how we do it was because of how Gunvald did stuff, and he was just fabulous. I mean, yeah. So I can't say how much I appreciate those two guys, but certainly Raymond the Quiet, and then Bardolph, of course. Everybody wants Bardolph to be king.
I think Bardolph would be great. I would love to see Raymond be crowned. He is the epitome. Him and St. Craigon are people that, if I ever have a newcomer ask me, what's it mean to be a peer, I point to those two men. Like you can't go wrong there, right? Those are wonderful examples.
Yeah, and we're lucky. We have so many really, really great triple peers. I mean, think about it. You got up in Enterhoff, and he's just fabulous. Everybody wants to be like Dietrich. You got Tori down here. I mean, he's just fabulous. We're lucky enough to have Craigon. I haven't even mentioned Craigon. Craigon's one of the greatest guys ever in the entire history of the planet, right? But the thing about Craigon is Craigon could still win crown. I've seen Craigon fight with a spear. So Robert of Bach, I don't know if you remember Robert of Bach. Yep. He was a mighty marshal. He lived here for a while. He was one of Corus's squires. He won crown with a 9-foot spear. If we ever have a 9-foot spear crown, no one's beating Craigon. He's just going to walk through, boom, King Craigon. If Sarah's watching right now, she's like, why don't you do that? You could do that, right?
Sarah might actually try and beat him.
Fair enough.
That'd be a great finals. Sarah and Craigon with a 9-foot spear. So Sir Helga, Her Grace Helga of the West, would like to know, in your opinion, what is the most powerful award for the Outlands and why?
I think the Order of Arms is the most powerful award we have, because it basically it's magic. You go from being sort of a newcomer, maybe an interloper, you just don't feel part of the crowd, and we give you an Order of Arms, and now you're one of us, and you get to be Lord or Lady, whomever. And that's magical. I remember when I got mine, I was like, I don't deserve this. I mean, so I think for me anyway, I think the most powerful word is the word of arms, even though it's society-wide. I also like the fact that our scroll text matches the West scroll text. Even after all this time and all these years, we still say the same things on our scrolls for words of arms that they do. I just think that's really cool.
That is very cool. Is there anything culture-wise? So, sorry. One of the things the Outlands is very kind of widely, worldwide known for is the yelling of Outlands. Do you know where that originated and how that got started?
Well, my understanding is that there were a bunch of really, really talented folks at and they were borrowing banners. Like they would take banners from one camp and then put them up at another camp, and then they were switching banners all over. And whenever they would get caught, they would run away and they would yell, Outlands! And so I think that's where that started. And then they started doing it in court because there was always this Outlands thing. And then now at the end, everybody screams Outlands. So, but I think it started with a bunch of drunk Palantir guys, is what I think.
Yeah, it doesn't work so well when the Swedes yell Outlands. We know it's not Outlands.
I know, right? Or we would know that the stag is not yellow.
Very true. Very true.
That was a reference to Shaun of the Chippendales, by the way, if you guys
right? The stag man?
Yeah.
What her Grace Duchess Gabrielle from Aidenvelt asked, what one thing would you like to be remembered for from your time as king?
Oh, really? I just think one. I don't know. I mean, I think I want people to think when they look back at my reigns, they're like, yeah, he tried his best and he did an okay job. I mean, seriously. I mean, I get a lot of love from people say, you were a really good king. I get people going, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. So again, you get the whole gamut of folks telling you how they thought you were king. But I just like to know that I really took it seriously and I really tried to be as much a king as I could. You know, I always felt really strong about that. I was like, why should the king of the Outlands be any less a king than anyone else ever? Right? We have a whole kingdom. We have a whole structure of nobility. You have peers. And it's like, if you're going to be king of the Outlands, why can't you just be as much a king as, say, the king of France ever was? And I just thought we should play it up as much as we could. So if you're going to be a king, be a king. Don't just be some guy who gets to eat first and wear a bigger hat, right? So I did that, but I don't know that I care to be remembered for that. That was always just really important to me, to be as much a king as a king could be.
Very cool. Baroness Eleonora would like to know if there are any traditions from other kingdoms that you've seen in your travels that you would like the Outlands to adopt.
Well, I like what the West does with crown tournament. So in the Outlands, our tradition has always been, I'm only going to enter that tournament if I'm really dedicated and able to win. And the tradition in the West is that everyone fights. And then you have really large crown tournaments. I fought in a West crown tournament one. I think I was going to college. I was going to Cal Poly in the West. And I fought in a West crown. And I think there was like 98, 100 guys in this tournament. And so because of their culture, they have really large crown tournaments. I would like to see us do that. So I think that would be a great tradition we could do. I don't see that ever happening here because I don't know that we can change that culture. We've tried. I mean, Walrick's great. Jax is great. These guys, they come in, they fight in crown all the time. I really appreciate those guys doing that for us. It's fabulous. But I don't think we could change our culture to do that, but I would like to see it. So that's the thing I would like to see from another kingdom for sure.
Okay. So since I have you as a captive audience, I have a personal question that I've always wanted to know the answer to.
Evan.
Where does your disdain for the word dude come from?
Oh, I've read it. I've read the word, the definition, and actually, so I'm not a guy from the East Kingdom who wore a big fancy hat and didn't know how to ride a horse. So that's why I don't really like the word dude. So for anybody who doesn't know, I try not to let anybody ever call me dude because it's just some fancy guy who doesn't know how to ride at a ranch trying to row cattle. Yeah, so that's why.
That's a very good answer. Thank you for humoring me on that question, Your Grace. I appreciate it.
No problem. Although if you're from California, you don't have any other choice. So I've always had the caveat that if you're from California, you can call me dude. And my wife was born in California, so she takes advantage of that, which is much to my chagrin. So.
Sir Ferris would like to know, what would you like to see in the Outlands done differently?
Oh, that's a good question, Ferris. I don't really have anything off the top of my head. I mean,
sorry, for 5 years from now, what would you like to see being done differently?
Oh, 5 years from now. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with the way things are now. I mean, I've seen some stuff where we're trying to use technology to make our SCA lives different, and I don't really appreciate that. Not that it's horrible, like we're doing this thing now, but it's like we're in a very weird, strange place right now. So this is like trying to keep the SCA people enthused and engaged, and so I really appreciate this. But I think 5 years from now, let's not have so many people pushing their way out of. If they're making a pier, some of the camera gets in your way. That happens. I think that I would like to see less technology, maybe, in open, just in the open at events. But like what we're doing today, I think is fabulous.
Are you when you're crowned, do you not like people taking pictures during court, or is it something that bothers you, or are you okay with it as long as it's not obtrusive and interviewing the medieval moment?
So I think pictures are great. People love pictures. Lavin takes wonderful pictures. Madigan takes wonderful pictures. I mean, Zach, oh my gosh. But they didn't take away for me when I'm in the ceremony. I'm like, oh God, Les Lavin getting in the way. I mean, it just never bothered me. So unobtrusive, exactly what you said for me. I think pictures are great. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to let our audience members know, or any future crowns of the Outlands know?
No, not really. I mean, I'm talking for solid hours. So like, not really. I mean, the Outlands is, in my opinion, the greatest place to live in the world. And I've lived here almost my entire career. Like I said, I went to school in the West, in college, but I came back, and the Outlands is the greatest place ever. There's nothing else. You guys know it. If you've moved here or you live here, we do things our own way, and I really like the way that we do them. And I've had a lot of say in where we are and how we act as a kingdom. I mean, we still do the whole Argonia thing. I mean, I just smile every single time. I mean, it's just magic. So yeah, so I just love the Outlands. I don't really have anything else to say. Thanks for keeping the Argonia thing going, I guess.
To me, being when you're crown prince and you are the dread lord of all Argonia, that is the coolest title in the world, hands down. I will fight anyone over that.
Welcome,
So, and it's even more so. It's for me, it's even more important because I know the origins of it, and that leads directly back towards you. And you are a large inspiration to so many people in this kingdom, myself included. You've been a great example of a peer, of a knight, of a pelican, of a king, and just as a decent human being, right? It's so easy to get caught up in things that are going on in the world and lose your way and stuff like that. And so to have people like yourself in this kingdom, there are constant reminders of the way things should be, and the right way to play the SCA is we're a very rich kingdom because we have a lot of people like you that do that. So
very nice of you to say, Sarah. It's like, for me, there's people that I've always looked up to, and one of the things that I've always appreciated about you, not to blow smoke up each other's butts, but no one has traveled the length and breadth of this kingdom, has worked harder as king than you. I mean, you've tried you've done so many things, you've gone so many places, you've really cared about people. When you were deputy seneschal, that was one of the hardest jobs in the world, and you just did that job, and you did it efficiently and wonderfully and quietly, and you just made things better. And that's one of the things, you've heard me speak in circles many times, and that's one of the things I always say is this person going to make things better? And that's what you've always done for the Outlands. And this is a really hard time for people. It's hard for them personally. It's certainly hard for them in their SCA lives. And there's no one, seriously, maybe Rothgar, no one who could do a better job than you are with this horrible time that we're living through and make it as good as it's been. And you guys, and Nurse as well, you guys are just doing a fantastic job, and I, for one, really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Grace. That means a lot. It really does mean a lot. I don't want to keep you on a Saturday, but I really appreciate you coming and participating in the inaugural show. I hope you had fun.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm not on Facebook, so you can't reach out and ask me other questions, but I got a lot more stories. So whatever you guys want to know, just let me know. On the side, I'll just let you know whatever. So cool.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
So for everyone else out there, thank you for watching. If you like this show and want to continue watching, please like and follow the Outlands Royalty page on Facebook. That will have the schedule for all of our upcoming shows. 2 weeks from now, Her Majesty Nerissa will be interviewing Countess Matilda, and I'm very much looking forward to that show. And then 2 weeks after that, I will have on the Black Duke, Johan. So I'm really looking forward to that show too, following this one up. So
That'd be great.
Thanks, everyone.